See the video's logo right here? Well, instead of that, you just drop in your own logo. It used to be
Okay, guys, welcome to, I think, episode number 40 of Extra Bytes. And this episode is very, very special, both in terms of the milestone that we are achieving, in terms of the numbers that we have, sheer numbers that we have done, and also for the special guest that we have today. So before I get on with the introduction part, let me just give you a brief background. It is just a few days back when we decided to start some series trying to somehow motivate the already challenged kind of photographers fraternity that was in lockdown. And what started off as a small experiment actually flourished. And today we are already into the 40th episode. Now, we started off with landscape photographers, and then we started inviting photographers from different genres like street, documentary, photojournalists, and even advertising and wedding and fashion. So yesterday we had one wonderful session by Tarun Khiwal. And today we are again back with our forte, which is landscape photography. And who else is a better speaker today than our own Desi Bangalorean Bobby Joshi. So thank you, Bobby, for accepting the invite and accepting to be a part of this of this session and joining Exploring Light today with the new session of Extra Bytes.
Congratulations, Jassi and the team. 40 episodes and the work that you guys have done is phenomenal. I think it's a great initiative. I wish you all the best. You already are doing a great job.
Thank you. Just to give a brief background about introduction about Bobby, is that he is a world traveler and also a nature admirer. I think his admiration for nature is what actually made him start exploring landscape photography. So he photographs like he has been unanimously reserved by nature on the day of his birth. I think that is phenomenal observation, and I've still been trying to book my my appointment with God, that I also want to be that flag bearer of conserving the. And, he keeps the subjects within the range of planet Earth's characteristic self, wonderful, and finds beauty and stories in things that only heart can feel. Certainly, when you look at his images, you certainly feel so. He is a master storyteller of Mother Nature, capturing glory within visually stunning images. Before I start babbling around, I think it is high time that I introduce the panel and hand it over to Bobby himself. So we have Himadri Bohan from which place exactly?
Guwahati.
We have Prakash from Dubai, and we have Som from Bangalore, again the hometown of Bobby himself. We are missing a couple of people. I think they will be joining in a while. They're stuck in their own office work. So, Bobby, tell us, how actually did you get into photography? How I understand that getting falling in love with nature is one thing, but everybody who falls in love with nature does not fall in love with photography as well. And we've seen also that people who are nature lovers are not necessarily landscape photographers. Yes, that becomes one common factor, but not necessarily. So what actually kind of what you saw while you were already started admiring nature, what you saw in that you wanted to pick up the camera, and why only landscape photography? I know that you do some other genres as well, but you started with landscape. That's what my understanding is.
That's right. So I think, so my dad was in the army, okay, and if I divide my life into two sections or two segments, the first one till I would say till I was like 20 to 22 to 23, and then beyond that now, the first 22 years were actually spent in wilderness, in absolute wilderness, because that being in the defense and army, we were always transferred to outposts. So places like you wouldn't even have heard names of. I was just studying Himadri a while ago. I spent a lot of time in Shillong. I've spent a lot of time in Agartala. I've spent a lot of time in places like Obra, which is like a very unknown place in somewhere in UP. A lot of places which were very close to nature. And that's where I did my schooling. That's where I grew up. And every 3 years, we used to get transferred. So every 3 years was a new place. And then, the whole cycle would begin again. So being in places like those, and then my hometown is Almora, Nainital, which is another beautiful hill station. And I used to spend a month every year in Almora, Nainital, and then a month in Shillong, and then the whole year in wherever dad was posted. So all of that has nature, and it came just automatically. I didn't know what city life was. The first city I actually stayed was in Bangalore when I moved here after my college. And that's when I realized, oh, this is like what a big city life is. But till then, it was all of those places. So I think that's where the love or the connect for nature started. I've always struggled to answer a question. If somebody asks me, am I a mountain guy or am I a beach guy? I can't decide. I love nature so much in every form, in every way. And photography has been a part of my life for a very long time. So my dad had a Yashica when I was, I think, in second standard, the reflex roller, yeah. And so I used to sneak into it and see how the world was back when I was in, as I said, second grade. That was like a really, really long time ago. I got my first camera when I was in 7th, 8th standard. It was a point and shoot film camera that my mom bought for me, and I started shooting. I was in Calcutta. I was actually about 2 hours away from Kolkata or Calcutta, as it was called then. And I started shooting a lot around at that place. Then I moved my own way, eventually buying my own cameras, and I started with I think a defunct company now called Vivitar. So it was my first completely manual SLR, film-based. I shot with it for about a year and a half, went on a trek, realized, shucks, it doesn't focus with one hand because there was no auto. And then I came back and I sold the camera back to the guy who sold it to me. And I moved up with Minolta Auto SLR, which is again a film-based. So I was with that for almost 8-10 years, bought a lot of lenses and everything else. And then eventually in 2010 and 11, moved to digital, full-fledged with a first full-frame camera. And then the journey has stayed. So the part of life, the earlier part of life was very connected to nature. That's one. And that obviously is the only life I knew. As I said, I don't know what city life, or I didn't know what city life was. And photography went hand in hand, both traveling and my own, I think, what I saw around with my dad. And he was a decent photographer, I would say, when I look back. He was more into portraits though. And it stayed since then. And then I got into roles. I've worked for IT companies, for tech firms for a long time, consulting firms for a long time. All my roles were global roles. I was actually never, the last time I worked for an India-based role was back in 2007. That was my last India role. Since then, I moved into all global roles, which required me to travel around the world. And that gave a lot of added advantage. It helped me to build the portfolio, helped me to start shooting in different conditions with different photographers around the world, which was another advantage, helped me to grow pretty quick, both in terms of photography, post-processing, a lot early. I mean, I started off my Facebook page back in 2011 when a handful of people were there back then. So the advantage played to me or in my life since then, and it continues. So that continues to be my first love. It has only become stronger. But as you said, I do dabble with other genres of photography as well. So I'm going to pause there. Too much of talking.
No. I think that's quite an inspiration to listen to. And so you started from the film era, and then you hopped on into the digital era as well. Was it easy for you to really do this transition, or you found it a little challenging? And what was your thought that? Because I've seen many photographers, including my own father, who suddenly just could not cope up with what was happening in photography, and he had to move on to some other pasture.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. In fact, I'll tell you what, I was struggling on both sides. when I was with film, I started to realize that I wanted to have the advantage of starting to process my own film in my own chemical, and creating making a dark room at home was not a viable option for me back then. I was living out of a bachelor's pad in Bangalore, and I did not have enough real estate to actually set it up. So I was starting to get frustrated because I couldn't process those images as I wanted. So I was using an ISO 400 film, and then I would give it to processing. If those guys messed up with the chemical composition, then the entire result which came out was not what I shot. So my sunset would look green, or it would look weird. It would be cross-processed, so to speak of. So they were processing images with the wrong chemical, which was meant for some other film. So I was getting frustrated there. Then when I moved to digital camera, I suddenly realized, oh my God, this whole processing is a different animal altogether. And so I started off with Picasa, and it was like, wow, I was a king in making and messing my images, because I would just do whatever intuitively I would just know of to doing. But then what happened was in 2011, I remember still, it was in June, July that I think I bought my first digital camera. I went to Kabini for a trip, and it was a really fruitful one. And I went to Langkawi in Malaysia. I got a really nice sunset. Came back and I started getting frustrated with the fact that I didn't know the post-processing. By 2011 onwards, I started to travel to US quite a bit. And I was traveling almost like every 2 months I was in US and a month in India. And so I started to work with a lot of photographers in US. And back then, photography world was very different. The word collaboration was high on everybody's mind, and people would actually happily share with you their knowledge, their information, which things has changed. So I was lucky there. So every time I would be in San Francisco, I would be in Dallas, I would connect with photographers there. Facebook was already on pretty big in 2011 and 12. And so I connected with a lot of them. I actually shot with them. A lot of them taught me processing. So I was probably one of the early students of, I don't know if you guys know Chip Phillips. He's a pretty, So he is based in West Coast. I worked with him, and there are a few other photographers. So that's when, that whole thing came. So you're right. The transition from film to digital was like, you let a person be out on a field and you don't tell him where to go, and he's running like all over the place. That was what was happening to me. So suddenly, instead of 36 short film roll, I had, whatever that card was back then. I don't think it was a SD card, it was some other card. And I was shooting like anything I wanted, everything I wanted. So I realized very quickly that the discipline is another thing I need to learn. I need to learn post-processing. I need to visualize differently. The film and digital cameras have different ways of shooting, the way you see light and the way it transitions into your, and then plus the raw thing was the other thing. It was something which in film-based camera, you don't have that. I mean, there's something called negative, yes, but you don't control that, right? You just take a shot and then you give it to somebody to develop. So those were some interesting learnings, but it would be fair to say I was struggling in the second half of 2011. In fact, I still remember I signed up a class with Sudhir Shivram. He was doing post-processing classes back then. I think it was with Toehold, if I remember correctly. But I couldn't attend it. So I signed up, and that weekend when I was supposed to do it, I started to travel and I couldn't do it. But by 2012, and I think about 2012 mid, is when I started to get a good grip of what digital photography was. So yes, it took about a year to transition, I would say.
Yeah, because when you move from film to digital, there are a lot of things you have to deal with. The poor image quality because of lower megapixel count in initial cameras specifically, and you were there into printing and film era, and suddenly when you're printing these images, they are coming out to be as if without any details whatsoever. And then you have to get into the learning process of you have to unlearn what you learned earlier, and then to relearn your what you initially mentioned, that get into Picasa first, and then and something like that, and then Lightroom and Photoshop made their way, and then learning those as well. So was there anybody who you started following in terms of photography as an individual, or maybe some platform where you were trying to figure out what others are doing and how they are managing, which helped you somehow shape your photography and yourself as a photographer, and maybe pulled you towards the future era that we are sitting now in?
So one of the things that I must say is that when I work with, just like you, Jassi, I also work with a lot of amateur hobbyists who come and work with us. Now, what I see a stark difference, at least in the times that I started learning photography to the times today, is that I don't see people investing time in learning. And I think you've said it repeatedly that all the stuff that you've learned in 18 years, kind of positions you to become an engineer or a graduate. I think this was your words. I read it, or I was listening to you one time, versus somebody wants to learn photography overnight. So I started buying books, and I had subscription to photography magazines and journals way back from 95, 96. And by 2004, I had, and 2000 is when I bought my first flat in Bangalore. I had actually half a room dedicated to my only photography books. So I was reading and I was watching so many photographs from photographers around the world that it was consciously playing into my mind a lot. So that was one thing, that learning of 8, 10, 12 years of solid learning, and through books, by the way. When I was not into blogs, internet was not big back in 2000, 2002. Those were some serious, big binded books. I have a lot of photographs from photographers around the world. And I was basically looking at only landscape, by the way. So, so that was one. And then by 2011, 2012, there were people who are still, who are big today, like Mark Adamus. I always talk about him. He had already broken into scene, and he was doing some amazing work even in 2012, 2013. In fact, I think I was in Flickr. I was more in Flickr in 2012, 13 than 500px, which happened later. So there were a whole lot of photographers who are still connected with me. I'm connected with them, where the interaction started. And even today on my Instagram today, I'm still connected. I still follow, and thankfully those photographers also follow me back. So we once in a while share notes about what's happening. And it's easy once you connect with that select people with similar mindset, that you can rally questions, you can ask them, doubts or things. Like, for example, I remember there's this friend of mine, I call him friend, though I haven't met him. His name is Julian. He goes with B-Boy Photography as his handle. He does some amazing HDR. He does like 9-shot, 13-shot merge of HDR. And I was blown by his work. I think this was like 6, 7, 8 years ago. And so I wrote to him and I said, hey guys, I want to book a Skype session with you. I want to learn what you're doing. Though I never took to HDR. I still don't do HDR. I don't have the patience of shooting those 10, 12, 13 frames and then coming back and merging them. But he was so open about sharing knowledge. 2 years ago, I wanted to go to Dolomites, and he was again one of the photographers I turned to, and I said, hey, I'm going to be in Dolomites first trip, not taking any tour guide or anything, and I need help. Where do I go park? What do I see? How do I do this? So he wrote a long mail, explained how to go about this. Those are some of the things that have stayed with me. And that's not just about taking the logistics help of where to park and what to shoot or what coordinates to go, which obviously was one of the things that was going on, but it was also about really what's the best time of the year to shoot, what are the best angles to shoot, why do we shoot, what do we shoot. So there were discussions around that. A lot of sessions that were happening either on Facebook Messenger or on Skype sessions that were being shared. So those were the times when I was very hungry to learn. I did have the concept, but what I found is that till 2011, I was primarily shooting out of India. And you know how it is, right? You're shooting in places like Bangalore or around Bangalore, you don't have those great skies. You don't have those red, orange, blue skies. So the way the light that we see versus the light that is available, let's say, West Coast or somewhere in Vietnam or Bali, they're very different, right? You've shot there, you know this. So what was happening was when I would ask them, hey, I know that you guys go after the golden hours. For example, I would struggle at golden hours back then because my exposures were always off. So once the twilight sets in and the sun is down, then it's easy. But with the sun still up the horizon and I'm trying to compose something, I was not getting the right setting. So either I was blowing it or I was underexposing it, but the point was in camera, it was getting messed up. So those are some of the discussions that I had with photographers and said, how do you do it? Where do you meet her? Because I was struggling with it. And thankfully they all helped. It's like, this is what I do. I use somebody said I use filters. So I said, okay, let's try filters. This is, I think, in 2013. And film, I didn't have filters. But when I moved to digital, I did start buying filters. And they were like, what is filter? And then, so the whole learning process around filter. So that's how one by one chapter started to kind of open up. and started to read, started to understand, started to learn, then execute it. Again, roundabout question and roundabout answer, I mean.
No, that's it. Wonderful. Anybody wants to ask anything, guys?
I think we can go ahead with this.
Okay.
The
So,
images and all.
but I just want to ask Bobby that when did you feel that now is the time to probably leave your job and or have you still left or not? So we would like
Good
to hear
question.
that. And
question.
when did you feel that now is the calling and now you must take the final plunge?
Okay, so for me that happened over a few steps, and let me just take this back again. So I was, so this is a little confusing. Okay, so stay with me as I describe this. So I was full-time an employee, and my last full-time employment was with Dell, Dell Services, which was back in 2013. Is when I quit Dell. I was in their Dell Services merger acquisition team. I was heading their alliances strategy globally, based out of, well, I was based in Bangalore, but my profile was based out of Plano, Dallas, which is where I was travel up and down. 2013 is when I decided that this is the time to move into photography. So I took the first step and I decided I'm going to quit the full-time employment and I'm going to get into a consulting mode. So I moved into a consulting firm, which was very nice enough to tell me, okay, we will not take you as an employee, we'll take you as a consultant. And I joined them as a strategy consultant, and I was heading the sales practice for Asia Pacific. And the idea was, they told me, Bobby, you will have a great work-life balance. You can do consulting in your free time, and you can do your photography on the other side. So I actually announced a tour to Kerala. This was in 2013, November, I still remember. And I joined them in August. November, I announced a tour. October, I get a tongue lashing from my boss, ex-boss. He said, "Big boss, consulting is with companies where billions of dollars, millions of dollars, and a lot of people are engaged. And your photography is where your 10 people are engaged. So you can figure out where the priorities are." So I had to cancel that. And between 2013 to 16, where my work-life balance was supposed to be better, it actually got like this. So I was traveling 20 days a month, every month, and all of my assignments were outside India. There was zero assignments in India, and it is not even funny because I'll tell you the funniest, to give you an idea how crazy it was. I remember I got down from an assignment. I finished an assignment with Vodafone in South Africa, in actually beautiful place in Mauritius, and I got down in Mumbai because there's no direct flight to Bangalore. And I get down and I'm just getting out of the airport. I switch on my phone and I get flurry of messages from my MD for Asia, who's based in Singapore, and my boss based in Bangalore. And it was like 8 a.m. in the morning, and I'm like, "What's the fire? Why are you guys like, on my tail?" And they said, "You need to go to China in like 3 days." And I'm like, "China mein visa on arrival nahi hota hai. Or 3 days kya matlab? I have not even like touched India yet, and I was out already for about 7 days." And they said, "Sorry, you got to go," because there was an assignment which a consultant from Japan was supposed to do. He fell ill. And so I had to step in. So they accelerated the visa process and everything. And I barely got to Bangalore, packed my next bag, went back to Beijing. They were nice enough. And they said, they knew about photography, said, "Okay, so tell you what, take 5 days assignment, take 4 days off after that, paid by company, go shoot wherever you want." So that was the carrot. So I took it and I finished that. I came back to Bangalore. 2 days later, they tell me, "You got to go to Vietnam." So my life was so screwed, So 2013 to 2016, I was like, messed completely. Photography was like on my back burner. It used to happen, but it was like, I'm doing an assignment in Jakarta and I finish. I got 3 days. I traveled to Bali. I finished Bali, 3 days photography. I come back and then I go to Hanoi and so on and so forth. So there was a first step though. It started to dawn upon me that, I need to make a decision between living this so-called fabled life. And my friends were telling me, "What are you complaining about? You work with Fortune 100 companies, you're traveling around the world." And when you're in consulting, you get a great treatment. The reality is, because you're customers' money, clients' money, everything is 5 stars. It was like, so a Benz S-Class was waiting wherever I was going, great hotels, everything was nice. Unfortunately, there was no me time, right? So there was no photography time, there was no, nothing that I could do. 2016 is when I finally said, "Okay, that's it. I don't want to do this anymore." And these people who got me into consulting world were actually 2 of my good friends who I used to golf for like 10 years. So I was cursing them for all 3 years, all this 3 years, and said, you know, you guys showed me something, sold me something, and I'm like totally messed up. 2016 is when I decided to get full-time into photography, and I started Good Shot. And that's when we started that, you know, this is time to now get into it. Funnily, Good Shots, so we looked out for angel investors in Good Shots, and we decided that so it would have been easy to do a bootstrap. I'm sure I'm sure you would know this, but our ambitions were a little different. So we said that we will invite funding. A lot of people did come forward in doing it. And one of the people who I took funding from has been a very long-term friend of mine, Rajesh Naran. He actually owns a company called Ample Technology. And I've known him since 2000, 2002. And so Good Shots got incubated within Ample in Bangalore. So Ample is a large office, and we got incubated within it. It became a very symbiotic thing. And Rajesh said, it started by Rajesh saying, why didn't you help me out in some transformation consulting work? So his company, just to give a little background, his company owns, or Ample Technology owns, in the retail side, we own all the Bose, Under Armour, ASICS, and Apple retail stores across South. So that's all with us. That's the retail business. There's also a B2B business. So I came on board as a part-time consultant. It was supposed to be a 3-day, half-day work assignment, and that got full-time. And so finally, last September, I told him, Rajesh, I came out of the corporate world to do this, and I'm still getting sucked back into that world, trying to leave. So I asked him that, can he let me go by December of last year? December became March. March is finally becoming June. I don't think he's very happy about it, but I think this is now the final time that I'm stepping out, hopefully for one last time, out of the corporate into photography. So starting June end is when I move full-time into photography. But I've been doing photography for almost professionally for quite a while now, since 3-4 years I've been doing.
So you are also ending your corporate lockdown?
Hopefully, Jassi. My problem is I get pulled back because a lot of friends are still there. And it always begins by saying, "Thoda help kar do" types, but it becomes a pretty big thing. And I think it works both ways. To be very fair, I love that work as well. It's not that I don't. I think I'm good at that. And it's something that is close to my heart. I've done that for a long time. And it always challenges me working with people, process, system, changing mindsets, transforming, leadership, sales, whole lot of stuff. So it's something I enjoy. So maybe, I need to, they give me this much, I take this much, and they take this much, and then, the whole body goes there. That's how it's been working though.
Fantastic. So before I start getting chased and hit by people on YouTube, how about start getting into your images? So share us some.
Okay, so I've selected some images which, how would I put this? These are from places and images which have been either popular or close to my heart, at least in what I've done. So let me see if I can, hang on, just give me a minute. Okay, so I think my share itself needs to restart, and I'm going to just give me a minute, Jassi. I think I might have messed up the, I thought I had kept it ready, but it looks like it is not. Yeah, so all the images seem to have disappeared. So hold on, just give me a minute.
Yeah.
I just need to get the transitions up and running. Okay, and let me try now. So share screen and share. You guys see my screen?
Yeah.
All right, so this is, I've titled this one called The World Below. And this has been a pretty popular image, I would say, across Asia Pacific, and it's got me a lot of recognition. It's been bought by quite a few number of people as well. This was shot in Bali, a place called Kintamani, which is about 3 hours from Denpasar. And I've been to Denpasar. I mean, I've been to Bali at least 8 times, 9 times in last, I would say, 6 years. But I've never found conditions like this. This place is famous for the fact that you shoot from a very high point, and the whole village below, it's called Pingan village, is almost always covered with the mist or cloud, and they roll in from the other side of the mountain, and it kind of just moves up. And on the right side, you have the volcanic mountains of Batur. But I've never found conditions as beautiful as this. It was very chanced shot. In fact, again, going back with what we were discussing, right, that connecting with photographers and staying with them really helps. So I was actually in touch with a photographer from Bali before I made this trip. This was in 2014 that I shot. And this guy is pretty good. He's professionally into photography in Bali. He does a lot of tours and stuff as well, workshops as well. But it was very nice and gracious to actually have taken me to this place and no obligation. I didn't pay him. We just shot together. Let's just say that. We discussed a lot about Rarinda. I'm sure you guys must follow him. So anyway, landed here at about 3 a.m. in the morning, and we waited in bitter cold. I did not know. I mean, Bali is tropical, so I wasn't carrying any jacket. Nobody told me this place was so cold, and this place was really, really cold. I mean, it was seriously cold. And waited here till about 5:30, 6, and just about the sun was coming in is when I shot this. So there's a nice leading line of the road which goes in, and this is a little later of the morning shot. I've got the earlier shots where I've got a trail of light coming through that road, which nicely lights up the whole thing. So this is the first picture that I wanted to talk about. The next one, this is again a very popular image of mine, was shot in Kabini, shot in 2014, I think August. And there were two of these, this one and this. So I got two interesting stories to talk about. The one is, I had just given my camera to Nikon for servicing before I went on this trip. And I had a lot of sensor dust. So I gave it to them saying, please clean it up. And they cleaned it up and they gave it to me. It was, call it, this is the learnings of life, that I didn't check the setting when they returned the camera. And what I didn't know was when you give any camera for servicing, especially to remove the sensor dust, they change your image format to JPEG because they need to shoot this in JPEG. They don't shoot in RAW. And I always kept my image settings in RAW, right? So I shot the entire Kabini tour with the setting which was set on JPEG. So what people don't know is that this was never on RAW. This was all shot in fine JPEG. Luckily for me, it was fine. Otherwise, I would have been like, wow. So that was story number one. So both these images were shot in JPEG, don't have RAW. I was so upset with myself saying, how could I not check? So then the learning came that every time I pick up my camera and I'm out to shoot next time, I press those, in Nikon at least, you press those two buttons, which resets your camera completely. And then I set it up grounds up again. So it at least keeps me on top of what I'm doing. That was a big and a very pricey lesson, I would say, because I had these shots and I also had shots of leopard, which I've never been able to post because those were on ISO, I think, what, 1600 or 1000, and man, in JPEG, that's like, you can't do anything much with that. So that was one interesting story. The other interesting story is this particular image was on IKEA, Europe for a very long time, and I didn't know this, and I'm not sure how did they get a hold of it. It wasn't licensed to them, but it was bought by a lot of Europeans and Americans, a lot of them. And what happened was, I think IKEA took it down from their store last year, September, October. And then I started to get flurry of emails on a weekly basis saying, we would love to buy this, we'd love to buy this, from all over the world. And I was very confused. I said, suddenly kya ho gaya? This image has been there for a very long time, and suddenly I'm getting Germans writing and Russians writing and Americans writing saying, I got into a new house and I'd love to have this on my wall, what was the price, what's the size, blah, blah. It's much later that I started to, there was a lady who was based out of America, I think she was American or Canadian, I'm not sure. She sent me the link and saying, did you know that this is up on IKEA, though it's out of stock now. So I don't know how many copies they sold, but my guess is it sold quite a bit of them. At least my guess is the kind of traction I've seen in the last 6-8 months with the number of people who want to buy this. Well, good about 400-500 units of these in different shapes and size would have been sold. Yeah, that's like the other thing. I've never really bothered too much about the copywriting and plagiarism of these images. I mean, people have downloaded images and made their entire profile of my picture. But yeah, it was in my mind to go after IKEA. So next time I'm in Europe, I'm going to stop by and check with them. The next one, these two images are from Kerala. Again, very close to my heart. This image was bought by National Geographic, and there's a spread on this. I think it was done about 3 years ago. Again, got a lot of recognition, a lot of, I think, what is this? The flight magazines have bought these. So I have never, the little story here that I've never, two things I've never done in my life, actually three things. One, I've never submitted my image to any website, any publications ever for publication or ever. So I've never done that. Never mailed my images, never sent my images for publication. Two is never participated in any competition. I realized very early that competitions are not as competitive as it should be. So I was like, that's not my cup of tea. And the third thing is, if any publication did come to me and wanted my image to publish, unless and until it was a CSR activity, I've always priced it. So even when National Geographic came and asked for this image, I told them it's going to cost them a certain money, and so they did. But anyway, both of these were shot in 2016, April, May, very hot season in Kumarkum, but the best season to go if you want to catch those great lights and amazing sunrises and sunsets.
This is the previous one. This is from the high vantage point, or how?
Yes. So there was a road. There was a road which was going, and a canal was going, or the backwater was going through it. So I was on the bridge, and I shot it down from there. So this is really pretty place. I mean, actually, I don't know if you've been to Kerala or not, but every place in Kerala, rural Kerala, everything is so beautiful that if you can just spend some time, you can shoot all day long. Okay, the next one is China. So I've got a lot of images from China. This one was done in 2017, but I've also shot in Guilin and Yangshuo area in 2014 and 15 as well. So the first, I've been to China a lot of time. Obviously, all of that was with consulting assignments. And I was usually going to Beijing and back, Beijing and Shanghai and back, and so on and so forth. Then there was one time I just told you when my consulting company said that, you need to go in 3 days, is when they gave me 5 days of paid vacation anywhere you want in China to shoot. So I chose this place first time in 2014. And I had to hire an English-speaking guide and English-speaking driver who were with me for about 5-6 days. We had a lot of fun, did a lot of photography around China, amazing places there. And obviously, I mean, cormorant fishing, so to speak of, is a dead art. They do this only for photography. It doesn't happen in its natural setting. But I really like the images from China from that time. This is in Vietnam, Mukang Chai, the rice terraces of Mukang Chai. So I've shot rice terraces in a lot of places, Bali, Vietnam, India, a lot of places, China as well. But Vietnam's Mukang Chai has an amazing, I mean, it's like what I would call a million terrace rices, everywhere you see, at least in the Mukang Chai area. So you look around and as you take a view around and as far as your eyes go, you will see just these rice terraces and rice terraces. And because they are like surrounded by mountains on every side and the rice terraces are here, usually in the evening or the mornings as well, the light is very diffused. There's no direct light because mountains kind of stop that. They don't let the light come in. So this was also the place where I don't want to, I don't know if people are in India or abroad, I don't want to take their appetite away, but Vietnam first time for me was an eye opener. I was like, wow, all the stuff that you hear about what people can potentially eat was being eaten. And I was like, okay, I didn't know really where to look, what to do, what to eat. It's the only time I go to Vietnam, every time I lose weight and come, by the way. I mean, every time. And I am a non-vegetarian. I thought, when people ask me, what do I eat? I said, I eat everything. And I was very proud to tell that. And I said, and if somebody asks me, what have you eaten? I'm like, I've eaten all this, and I've eaten this, and I've eaten that. But you go to Vietnam, all the definition just changes completely. So, especially I'm talking about North Vietnam, though I have to say that the Vietnamese food is great. So if you're in Hanoi, if you're in the other places around there, yeah.
I've been there and it's amazing, amazing.
Yeah. Amazing food. But if you go to North Vietnam, and these places are very close to China border, and this is like, there's a couple of places where you can wave hands on the China side. There, it's a little, the hardship on food is pretty evident. Let's just put it that way. Ho Chi Minh City is the other place, and Da Nang, and then you go down to Ha Long Bay. Those places are more touristy, and so food is great. People are also very, they offer you cuisines which are from different parts of the world, but North Vietnam is where the challenge is. This is Vasco da Gama Bridge in Lisbon, Portugal. And this was shot in 2000, I think this was shot in 2013. And learning for me was that that was a time, till then I was very cowboyish in my attitude about travel. I would be like, camera ahead, batteries are charged, and if there's an SD card, I'm out shooting whatever I get, and I shoot. And I have an estimate of where I'm shooting, but I'm not particular about what I'm going after. Lisbon, I just had one morning. I was actually doing work in Madrid, and a few of my friends drove down from Frankfurt, and they were very nice to pick me up from Madrid, and we drove to Lisbon. I had one morning to shoot this, and this was on my bucket list for a very, very long time to shoot. And when we reached Lisbon, and we reached here around 4 o'clock, and so these two friends, I'm like, so where are we shooting? Where are we parking? We know that we want to shoot Vasco da Gama Bridge. We didn't know where to park and where to get in, because you have these barricaded barbed wires everywhere. The access points are not there. And they hadn't done the homework. I hadn't done the homework. I was relying, they are from Europe, they would have done it. And they thought, oh, I am the photographer, so I would have done it. So it was the first time in my life I realized that how much of a planning is required. It's not enough to know that I want to shoot Vasco da Gama Bridge. It's not enough to know I want to shoot in an easterly direction. What was important was exactly where am I going to park and where I'm going to get in. Where are the access points? Where do you have those barbed wires, which allows you to kind of go on to the side? It was a very expensive learning, because so what happened was, one, I lost the first day of shoot, of course. And the next day, we did the homework, but here's what happened. Those two guys, their network was down. Cellular network was down. GPS was down. And only mine was working, and I was on international roaming. And for anyone who's done this in their life, international roaming data is pretty expensive. So my navigation to this and shot here and back, I think costed me a bill of about 6,000 to 7,000 rupees for that month. Right? So that's when I got smart, and I was like, okay, next time I want to know exactly what I'm doing, where I'm going, and how I'm going to go there. Today, I'm extremely, extremely pedantic and meticulous about places I shoot. So like I was just discussing Dolomites that I was talking about, right? So I know that Dolomite requires a lot of hiking. What I didn't know was where do you park and how much do you walk. So when I started to connect with photographers, I started to realize that it's got a challenge of its own. So I decided that it took me about 7 months to plan Dolomites before I could actually go and shoot there. So this was the learning. I brought this image in because I did do a lot of shoots.
Basically, that was your most expensive image, huh?
Oh yeah. If you have to call it single most expensive, this one would be the one. And you know what the worst part was? I didn't get the sunrise. The day before, we were looking at the sunrise, and we were looking at the bridge, and it was all red and orange and yellow. And the next day, it was all overcast. There was no light at all. So this is literally like the most expensive disappointing.
Sometimes happens.
Yeah, learning of life.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of shoots in rural India. Unfortunately, I've not been able to do that in the last 2-3 years. And I've promised myself every year beginning that I'm going to do more of these. I love shooting in rural India. This was shot in outside Siliguri in West Bengal. I've done a lot of shooting in West Bengal. My grandparents are based out of Siliguri, just outside Siliguri. So I go there pretty often. And a lot of evenings, I just pack a bag, cameras, and go. The interesting story is that I think this is true for any part of the world, but it is probably more pervasive in India, is that though this is our country, but we get so polarized with our, regional languages and regional mannerism that if a North Indian guy goes to a South India, or if I, North Indian, go to a West Bengal, if I can't speak their language, I'm an outcast. And they have this huge doubt. Who am I? Why am I there? Why am I taking photo in their land? And the whole suspicion and aggression that happens. So this evening, the same thing happened. So I was walking around, and the whole village actually came in. And it was much later that I got to know. So for the ones who are uninitiated, Siliguri is actually very close to Naxalbari, which is probably the hometown of Naxalites. So my dad was extremely worried. He used to tell me, don't go out like that. There are Naxals here. And I would laugh at him and think, which world are you in? There's no Naxals anywhere. So I was right, I think. So anyway, this particular evening I was shooting, and the whole villagers came, and they were like, why are you here? What are you doing? And this is all in Bengali. Now, fortunately for me, I can understand Bengali, and I can speak broken Bengali. So I started to tell them, hey, listen, I'm a photographer. So why are you shooting? I mean, the idea that I got to know later was that they were intimidated by the fact that they thought I'm from some land authority and I'm here to do a recce and that I'll buy their land or whatever that stuff was. So I got scared. I got totally scared. But fortunately, a couple of guys were at least they understood what Facebook was, what photographs were. So I showed them my page, I showed them the photographs, and then they opened up, and they opened up in a very nice way. So they were like, come to our home, have fish curry and rice, and have this and have that. So from what started as a very aggressive opening, it ended up becoming an extremely nice one. But this has kind of stayed with me. I mean, every time I've gone to shoot in Mysore or Tamil Nadu or wherever, where I have not been able to speak the language, it's always come and bitten me. I'm not sure how is your experience, but my experience in shooting in India is pretty scary. I'm actually more confident of shooting anywhere around the world, but here.
Yeah, I understand. But let us say when you go to these places, you go alone or you go with some group of friends?
No, so I am, to be fair, I'm not a big group guy. I prefer shooting alone. It's when I'm forced to shoot with good shots is most of the time when I shoot in a group. But given a choice, I would like to shoot alone. I have more control on my time. I know exactly what I'm doing, and more importantly, and I'll be blunt about this, I don't have to put up with people's mood. So it's my mood, right? So if I'm up for it, I'll do it. If I'm not up for it, I'll not do it. If I want to do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow. When you're with people, there's just too many things to kind of work with. This particular day, I was alone. What I try to do now, at least in Bangalore, is that every time we go to outside, so I love shooting around Mysore area. There's a lot of rice fields, beautiful places. Is when I do take somebody who can help me in translation. That really helps. I've struggled learning Kannada. I've tried really hard. People have taught bits and pieces. It still hasn't sunk in. So if I'm caught, then I'm like struggling with the language. So yes, it's been something which has been a challenge. If you shoot in rural India, you've got to know how you want to navigate around that because people don't like you shooting their houses and fields.
All right. And how do you decide on these places, these spots? Like, because they could be anywhere. Yeah. But or you are while you are walking around, while you are moving around, that is when you suddenly see a frame and you stop, or you somehow do some research, because doing research on these places is also not easy.
Yeah, not easy. No, so what so I'll tell you what I do when it comes to rural India, specifically rural India in India, is the recce and shoot happens like hand in hand. So I would start off by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, even today. So we shot, I think Surbi and I were shooting just about a week ago. And we didn't know, we had a rough idea of what we want to shoot, but we didn't know where to shoot this. So we left at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. From 2 onwards till about 4:35, all we were doing was driving around. So we drove about close to about 100 kilometers. Then we marked the places where we want to shoot. And then when the light is better is when we come back to shoot those places. So that's how I kind of do this. Unless until it's a place which is well known, like Munnar, Kotagiri, Ooty, those places are well known, so we kind of know where to go and shoot. But if you're in a rural India, as you rightly said, this could be any place in the world, right? It doesn't have to be Siliguri in West Bengal. It could also be Tamil Nadu. It could also be Gujarat. Could be Maharashtra. That's only when I see the sun sets this way. So my navigation is usually about where does the sun set. I follow the sun. If the sun is setting here, then I'm going to move on the lines and I see what along that line are interesting things for me to shoot. And I keep making notes of these places. And then when I see that by 4:35, when the sun starts to go down, is I go to the furthest point and then I start coming back all the places I've seen and I start to cover that up. That's typically how I do it.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure, Prakash.
So you are a big time basically sunset and sunrise shooter.
Yeah.
You don't prefer daylight?
Unless and until it's a place where the daylight is playing to my advantage. So a few places where it does do that is, I would say Dolomites is a great place. You can shoot Dolomites even in the middle of the day. There's absolutely no challenge. Light is really great. The haze usually plays to your advantage. But there are places like you can't shoot in Bali. The sun in Bali is so strong and it's very close to equator, right? Anything after 7 o'clock in the morning before 4:30 p.m. in the evening, you just can't shoot. So no daylight, almost no daylight for me.
Perfect. So what about when you are shooting a sunset or sunrise? Do you get stuck with one of the angle point of view, or you move around? How do you do that?
No, I do. I move around quite a bit. And as I said, again, these are all lessons learned in life, right? So in the beginning, when I was doing this, especially in the US, and I was not very well versed with the planning bit of it. I'm talking about, I think, 2010, 2011. So I still remember I was shooting close to San Francisco, a place called Daly, and I parked my car and I hiked down. Okay, and it was a really great sunset. So when you have a great sunset, you become high. You usually become euphoric high, and you forget everything else in the world. So I got down where I parked, or where I climbed down, and I started to shoot, and I walked, and I kept walking, kept walking, kept walking. So 5:30 became 6, 6 became 6:30, 6:30 became 7, blue hour. I'm still enjoying. Suddenly, around 8 o'clock, I realized I had no idea how far I had gone, and I had no idea where I parked my car, because there were a lot of places which were going up. So when I started to walk back, every 100 meters, I'm seeing something going up. And I'm like, I had no recollection. I had no memory. I had no marks, so to speak, of thinking, yahan se upar jana. It was like everything was looking same to me. Oh, I panicked and I had like a fit and anxiety and everything that evening. So those are learnings. Today, what I do is every time I start at a point where I start, which let's say I park my car or I get out of the car and start saying this is where I'm going to shoot, I start walking to the furthest point. So I keep walking, looking at the time when the sun starts to set in, and I have an idea of how far I've walked. And then I start to shoot. So what happens is, of course, now I have GPS points and everything where I park my car. But once I know that I've gone to the furthest point, it's easy to come back. The mistake I did that day was I started to shoot like this. And then I went to the furthest point, it was pitch dark, no light. I had no idea where I'm going. And I don't think my batteries on my phone was on, so no torch. It was like a nightmare come true. So those are some of the learnings. But yes, that's how I do it.
Nice.
This one is from Miami. It's Port Lauderdale, just outside of Miami. And the reason I picked up this image here was because I always wanted to shoot these piers, these long piers. It's like one of the things that I've always seen. It's not in India. Right? It's pretty peculiar to some parts of the world. It's not in India, and I always wanted to shoot this. And so this was a family vacation. I went with my sister and her family and my family, and we were in. My sister is based out of Philadelphia, so we flew in from Philadelphia to Orlando. We spent days in Disney, kids and everything. This was New Year's and Christmas time, okay? And this shot was made on 1st January, and I had just that morning, and I sacrificed my 31st night December party to get up early in the morning to shoot this. So I was like one of those, my sister could never forgive me for that. She's like, you've come to Miami, the capital, the partying capital of the world, the partying capital of the world, and you want to go sleep early because you want to shoot in the morning at sunrise? And I was like, yes, I want to. So I went to bed, I still remember, on 31st December at 10:30 p.m. And I had to get up in the morning at about 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. to get to this place where I wanted to shoot. So that's the price I paid. I will always choose photography and getting up early morning and shooting than partying any time of the day. I was happy with this. I wish there were a little more clouds though.
That decision that you always take is what I believe takes you forward and takes you ahead of others. And I think that
I think it's a commitment to the cause. I mean, photography is not something to me which is incidental. It's not something that I'm going to take a chance on. If it is something I'm committed to, then I'm going to make it happen. And so that continues with me even today. So even today, I do get warnings, let's call it that way, from friends saying that, don't take unnecessary risk for photography. And I do tend to take a lot of risk for photography. So I would want to go to that edge of the mountain or go, 5 steps below where I shouldn't go. Happen.
Oops, what happened? Jassi, you there?
Yeah, and then
we're all there, Prakash. We are with you.
Okay, maybe his line dropped.
Yeah, Bobby, you may have to reconnect.
Bobby, you there?
I think his line dropped.
Yeah, sorry, I actually got dropped. There was a power failure here.
Okay, cool.
Okay, it's okay.
Okay, so we're going to share this back again.
Yeah.
All right, so I was just talking about that. So yeah, I think it's the commitment to the cause which I think makes a difference. That's the only thing I can see. The next one is this is the blue house.
Bobby, I'd like to interrupt you here.
Sure.
Just a short question. So you mentioned like you always tend to take risks. So would you like to share with us any such moment where you were pretty scared and like
Oh.
apart from that story about the rural place?
No. I'm talking.
Yeah.
Lot of time, physical risks, lot of time. And I've got hurt. The worst one I think was in Singapore. So again, this was a place called, okay, now the name is slipping out of my mind. It's not a very popular beach in Singapore, but it's a very rocky beach, okay? And let the name come to me. And so I was there shooting for the evening. And it was really nice sunset, so I was enjoying it. But then this place, and I'm not getting the name, has a lot of rocky rocks on the water. And I did not have the right footwear to venture into the water. But as the sun started to set in, the light started to go soft. And, I look filters because I don't like the vignetting and stuff that happens. So I started to venture into the water, and knowing that I shouldn't be going, knowing that the stones are really jagged, it's really bad. And well, very deep, it took me an hour and a half.
Bobby, you have a
Bobby,
Bobby, I think you have a lag at your end.
Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
Well, let me just try and switch the connection again.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it better?
Yeah. So,
No?
Sounds better.
I'll have to switch the connection back, and for which I might disconnect it. So let me just try that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interrupted. So better you switch back.
Yeah, how is this now? I just switched. Might just take a while to come back.
Yeah, there is a lag between your voice and your video. Slight lag.
Well, let me just do one thing. Sorry about that. I'm just going to disconnect and connect back again.
Okay.
Totally fine. Yeah.
Is it raining there? Why the connection?
No, it's not. No, it's not raining, but we just had a power fluctuation. So I think that took off the. Is it better now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hopefully it stays now. So yeah. So I was telling you that I was walking back to the lobby. Even after 1.5 hours of that, I had bloody footprints through the hotel lobby, and I needed stitches. Here's the funny part. I got hurt. I didn't come back. I stayed. I shot till I couldn't shoot anymore, and I came back. But I would never advise anyone to do these things. But I've done this so many times. Especially the scary ones have been when I was shooting in Santa Cruz in California. There was the edge of the mountain, and I wanted to go down, like literally the edge, and there was a rock here, and I wanted to put my tripod and shoot from there. And I had a friend with me, and he was like, "Have you gone mad?" He's like, "I don't even want to see you." As in, I was going down. I told him, "Hold my tripod. I'm going to go down. Give me the tripod." He's like, "Bob," he used to call me Bob. He said, "Bob, I don't even want to see you." He turned around and went back. He said, "You're on your own. I'll come after a while to see if your body is down there or not." And I still went through it. Whatever I could do, I have done through it. A lot of accidents, a lot of bruises, a lot of cuts, a lot of blood. I call it baptism by blood. If you've not been baptized by blood, you're not a true photographer. Okay, no offense. I'm sure you guys.
No. That's totally fine, because I have had my share of experiences. I'm sure Som also has his share of experiences. So yeah, we are on the same page here.
Yeah. I was shooting in Chikmagalur. I can see leeches on my leg. I can count. There are 9 there were 9 leeches stuck on my leg, and I'm watching them. I was in shot, and they were like all over. I could see them crawl and stick to my leg. And I'm still shooting. And I'm like, you know what, I will deal with this once I'm out. I don't want to, you know, get out of this place now and take it for leeches and then miss a shot. I was like, I'm since already here. And since leeches are already stuck to me, I might as well just go through the shoot and do it. So yeah, I mean, Himadri, a lot of them are there. Not proud of it. I don't recommend it, but somehow I think I lose sight of what is sane and what is insane when I'm in that moment. It is something I'm working hard on myself to remind myself what to do and not to do, but it continues to happen though. I'll be very honest. The next one is the Blue House from Perth. This is again on my list of places to go for a bucket list for a very long time. Luckily, I was here in 2018. The only story I can share here is, I mean, this is a very popular place, but I don't think there's designated parking there. And so I landed up here in the morning and I was like, I don't know where to park. So I just went into somebody's house, literally, and the house was open, the gate was open. I put my car in their driveway, came out, I took 13 shots. I literally counted 13 shots, 15 minutes, went back, took the car and came out. I don't know whose house was it. Nobody complained and nobody caught me. But again, one of those moments where I should have not done what I did. Getting caught on moments like this is very bad, but I still went ahead and did it. Not proud of it again. This is Alpedis UC in Dolomites. Again, been going to these places over and over again in the last 2 years. Shot here quite extensively, stayed here for a long period of time as well. Luckily found these conditions last year, July. Flowers were blooming, the wildflowers were blooming everywhere. We had perfect conditions to take this shot. The story here that I'd like to share is that Alpedis UC, I think, Som, you've been there, right? I've seen some pictures of yours. Have you?
A couple of times at least.
So did you go park your car and hike up, or what did you do?
We stayed by a hotel over there.
Oh, lucky you.
And then, you know, just we moved around.
So if you don't stay in the hotel inside, then you have to park your car in the parking lot, and it's an 8-kilometer walk or hike one way, and then 8 kilometers back. So we were here and we had some guests with us, and I told them that this place is strictly no parking, no driving zone. It's a national park. And they were like, nahi chalte hain, risk lenge. And I was like, risk to le lenge, but if there is a parking ticket, then we all pool in the parking money and then we all pay for it. And they say, yeah, sure. And they didn't want to do that 60-kilometer trek. So we landed up here in the morning, perfect, great morning, had great light, shot. And, you know, my sixth sense is telling me it's time to stop and go. Okay. And my sixth sense is telling me when I go to my car, I'm going to find cops there. And yet I am the guy who is not able to stop shooting. I'm in control. I'm the one driving. So I should be rallying people around and saying, let's go, let's go, let's go. But I'm the one saying, okay, guys, let's go. And I'm still shooting. You know what I mean? And finally landed up there, and true to my intuition, we were visited by 2 rangers who gave us a nice fat ticket and a warning to not come there again. Happened last year. Again, something which stays with me. So again, an expensive shot, I would say, but I'm very happy. It was like 170 euros, I think. It was an expensive one. And there's a fine on top of that. There's a ticket and there's a fine. They're like, did you know that you're not supposed to come? I'm like, yes, sir, I know I shouldn't have come. So I'm going to give you a ticket for illegal parking, 2 for not coming into or coming into a restricted area, 3 for this, 4 for that. And it was like a big length ticket with, I think, 170.
10 Europe each kilometer.
Thankfully, he didn't take me to the jail and said, okay, now stay here for 2 days also. All right, this one is Valde Fumes again in Dolomites areas again, Dolomiti area. And I really like this church. Been seeing this in Instagram and Facebook for a very long time. Was always on my list to get there. The scary story here though is that we landed up here on a night before. And the hotel we were staying had 2 access roads. So there was an access road, which was the right access road. And my Google Maps showed me that. And I think I landed there at about 10 p.m. the previous night. And this place is very small. I don't know, again, you've gone there or not. It's a very small place. And when I looked at the road that Google Map was telling me, I can see that there is an alternate route coming up, right? So Google tells you, right, there's a slower one coming from ahead. In my mind, the slower roads are always broad roads. Google tells you this patli gali only when it wants you to save time. So I'm looking at the road and I'm thinking, here patli gali hai. I'm not taking this. I'll take the longer one, which I'm pretty sure is going to be a wider. And I had a Discovery, the big car with me, okay? So I give a skip to this road and I go forward, And the next road it takes me begins nicely, and it's relatively wide, and I'm happy, saying, oh, I took a good decision. But as it started to wind and it started to climb up, oh, that road got narrow and narrow and narrow. And I was going to the middle of nowhere at 10:30 in the night, literally nowhere. My car is going like this, and it's going like this, and it's going like this, and it's going like this. And I'm like, if this road does not end or does not reach anywhere, I can't reverse. There is no way I can either reverse the car or reverse, because that road was like probably the scariest road of my life. And it was pretty late in the night. Finally, we reached a place where my car is like parked like in an angle like this. And we get out of the car and we say, Bhagwan bachayega humko. We will walk up to see what's on the other side. If there is nothing there, we are just food for the night. So we went up. Thankfully, there were some people there, and they said, why did you take this road? The road is from there. So anyway, long story short, we still had to make that climb and get on the other side. So as I was coming down the road to get to the car, that ascent was so steep that Surbhi lost her control and she started to run down. And I was thinking from behind, why is she running? And I'm telling her, stop running. And she's screaming, saying, I can't control. And as she was running down, the only hope for her was to either hit the car and stop or slide by the roadside and end up somewhere. So I think she hit the car and stopped. It was a scary night. We had no idea where we are going. But next morning, we were greeted with really great light. And that shot that I always wanted of this place happened. So this is that shot.
So the learning was basically follow Google Map.
Oh, Google Map has got me screwed so many times around the world, not just here, so many times.
Helped us a very, very good way. We always follow Google Map, and we are never let down. Everywhere we have been to so many places, and Google Map is precise.
Lucky you.
Instruction.
I think when you are in mountain areas, it has happened with me as well, and it actually took us to one route which was like never ending, and it became narrow. It was in Spiti, and we got stuck, and there was no way we could even turn back. And then we saw the landslide also happening.
Oh, shock.
So we were stuck for 6-7 hours, unable to do anything. So it has happened with me also. So pretty bad.
Prakash, you must be navigating in cities. That's why.
No. I have navigating everywhere, in Faroe, in Norway, in Iceland, Amsterdam.
So all of them are great cities, no? Great places, great countries.
Faroe कहाँ से city हो गया? Faroe कुछ भी नहीं है.
अरे वहाँ पे तो
I'll tell you another.
एक ही रास्ता है, बस. There's no other. But I mean, in Tokyo, there are like 8 levels. You would not know which basically road to take. So even in cities, Google Map will fail you.
Yeah. One of the other big fails for me for Google Map was when I was in Yosemite, and I landed up pretty late in the night, and it was snowing. And the place where my hotel was, the Google Map was showing my hotel up in some mountain. And it was like 10 o'clock in the night. And I'm blindly following Google Map. When I landed up in some top of the Yosemite mountain, someplace, it's raining, snowing. I see one house. That's it. There's nothing there. So I know this is not my hotel. Okay. And I have no idea where am I. And I have no idea how to back up. I have no idea where to go, because this is my hotel address that Google Map is showing, where there is no hotel. So I don't even know where to go now. So I took a deep breath. I got out, and I was thinking, should I knock a stranger's house at 10 p.m. in Yosemite Valley, not knowing what is on the other side? So I climbed up the stairs. I see a man alone with a fireside, with big guns and axes in his wall, sitting and watching TV. I am scared. I finally knocked the door, and I'm like, sorry for disturbing him later in the night. And I'm foreigner, by the way. I'm not one of them, right? So I'm sure he must have been really scared, because the first thing he did was grab his gun. And I said, I'm really sorry. This is not what I want to do. This is what I'm trying to go, and this is where I've landed. Thankfully, he knew. He said, you're not the first person to who this has happened. For some reason, Google does this. Then he gave me the direction to where to go. The Google horror stories are like, I've got full of them. We can connect offline and discuss that. You're really lucky. That's all I can say. Okay, I'll take you to the next image. This is from Valensole, France, the lavender fields. Again, this has been on my to-go place for a very long time. And I missed this out in the last 2 years. But the story here is that last year we landed up in Milan, and we were supposed to do our Dolomite trip. But we went to, we took a 3-day, I think 4-day detour and booked ourselves in Tuscany. So I wanted to go back and shoot Tuscany and Florence again. So we landed there, and we unfortunately caught Florence and Tuscany in a season when the greens were all gone. So it was pretty autumny kind of a season there. And while there, and when you're on Instagram, Instagram does pick up stories from around where you are. The Explore starts to show you geographically proximate places of proximity. It started to show me the lavender fields were starting to bloom in Valençol. Now, Tuscany to Valençol is about 12 hours of drive. And, you know, so you're on one end of Italy and you've got to go to the other end of France. And we had 4 days of booking in Tuscany to shoot in Tuscany. And so I was discussing with my friends. I'm like, do we want to get stuck here for 4 days, look at this bald topography, or should we really take a deep breath, be courageous, and go to Valençol? Now, I'm the only guy who drives when I go abroad. So we took a deep breath. We took a impulsive decision. We forego our 3 days of booking, lost that money, had breakfast, and we took off and drove to Valençol non-stop, 11 hours. I had 2 500 mLs of energy drink on the way, something I try to avoid, but I had to stay awake because I did go to sleep late in the night, got up early in the morning for sunrise, and then drove 11 hours non-stop. Luckily, on the way, we got some really nice sunflower fields, which I didn't know were also a part of in Valençol area. Got some really nice sunset with sunflowers. And the next morning, we were greeted with this. So again, I don't know if you guys have been here or not, absolutely must go place. It smells divine. It's these lavender fields, they smell so beautiful. Just one tip though, please wear gumboots and go. Because whatever shoes you're wearing them, if it rains, you'll have to ditch them there and come. Okay, move to the next one. This is, I'm coming to the, I think the end of my images. So this one is taken in Hawaii. This was another 2-goal list. Like to me, in my mind, that's like the end of the world. If I'm in India, Hawaii is the other end of the world that I can go to. We're lucky that we got a project to work with the government or tourism of US, brand USA last year. And so they told us that, you know, pick any destination in US. And so I was like, I gave them 3 options. The first option was Hawaii. Second was West Coast, which I'm very familiar with. I've lived there. I keep going there. And the third and the last option was East Coast, which is where my sister is based. And I was hoping that they would give me the option that I wanted. So they did give us the option in Hawaii, and some really nice sunsets in Hawaii. Most of the images I shot there were for them, so I've not really used them. This was one of the last evenings that we were in Hawaii, and we got this. A lot of stories in Hawaii, some scary ones, some good ones. I think the one that I would like to talk about is the fact that none of the plans we made in Hawaii actually went by what we made or what we planned. So every morning, whatever was reserved for sunrise in a place or sunset in a place, we were always, and it always happened for the 2-3 days we were there, or 4 days that we were there, we had either rain or we were out stuck somewhere, or because the project required us to do a whole lot of other stuff. Like there were chopper rides, there were dives, there's a whole lot of other stuff that they packaged it with us. So, you know, net, the only great sunset that I got was this evening. And funnily, this was outside of the project evening that we got this shot from. That's it. I just had these images to share, so no more to share here, but I'm happy to discuss anything else.
Nice. There are some questions in YouTube. Jassi,
Sure.
you take it up.
Quite a few actually.
There are questions, I'm going to ask them. So there are some interesting questions there. One is by Janam. When we visit new places, we have various compositions and ideas to try. How to create images at the same place differently again and again?
I think there are 2 things I would say. When you go to a new place, you tend to get overwhelmed with what you see, and it's very normal and natural to do that, especially if you're going to a place which is visually very beautiful. So every time you're in a nice tea gardens, you're in a nice valleys with great light, the whole beauty of the place will overtake all your senses, and you will be overwhelmed with what you see. So the tip there is you've got to slow things down. You need to give yourself that time to really soak it up. And what I do is, this happens to me every time I go to a new place, is I slow things down. When I do that, what I mean by that is I don't take a single shot for at least 15, 20 minutes. I just don't take any shot, even a test shot. I would just stay off from the shutter. And all I'm doing is just observing and looking as much as I can. At that time, what I'm looking are elements that I can use, to use compositions. I'm looking at angles. I'm looking at foregrounds. I'm looking at subjects. I'm looking at light. I'm looking at a whole lot of things. And that happens to me. That's what I do when I go to a new place, right? If it's a place I keep going to, which is, let's say, taking up Bali, where I've gone, like I said, 8 times, or Hampi, where I've gone probably 10 or 12 times. The challenge is that, what do you do next? What do you do new, right? So 2 things. What I do is I in my mind, limit my entire photography to frames. So what I mean by that is, if I'm going to Hampi, I say that I'm only going to shoot 10 frames, and that's it. So the temptation to take the 11th, 12th will not come. So I am okay to sacrifice light. I'm okay to sacrifice compositions if I'm not convinced that that's the shot I want. So a lot of time that has happened, that I'm looking at a 5:45 p.m. light, and I'm like, okay, I think this is going to be the best light for the evening. And after this, something is going to not work. But I still want a particular light for a particular composition. So I'm going to still wait. If that composition requires me to have a light of 6:15, I'm going to take the chance and not shoot 5:45 frame, but shoot it at 6:50. So that's, again, another way of slowing down. But I narrowed that down. So to give you an example, Bali, the first time I went, I would have probably taken, in about 8-10 days I was there, I would have taken close to about 6,000, 5,000 frames. The last Bali trip I made, which was last year, June, or May, sorry. I think the entire trip, which was 7 days, 7 plus 2 days, actually 9 days, I walked back with only about 170, 180 frames. So I narrowed that down. So what that allows me to do is, it allows me to see more detail. So like, for example, when I'm Hampi, I don't look around, I look down. So my idea is to compose stuff with grounds up. So I want to look for compositions which allow me to frame stuff which is close to me. Otherwise, in my earlier trips, I would look far. I'm looking at compositions, elements, and subjects which are on the horizon. So a temple or a tree or structures. Now, when I go to Hampi, I realize, there are so many stonework done right here below my feet, and I'm missing them because I'm looking there and not looking here. But that allows me to compose same thing differently. In Bali, what I do is the fact that I want to narrow down the law of averages and go down and hone down on just number of shots. What I do is, it's about the timing, and it is about getting to the right place. So earlier, if I know that I want to shoot Tanhalot example, or a certain temple, I'm okay if I don't have the right angle. I'm okay if I'm like 10 feet away, or if I'm 15 feet that side, 16 feet that side. But now what I do is, I'm okay. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait for that Japanese guy to move his tripod. I'm going to wait for that Chinese guy to move his tripod out, and I'm going to wait and wait and wait. And it's okay if I miss it, but I'm still going to wait. So that's what I do. I think you need to challenge yourself, and there are techniques to challenge yourself. For me, what always works is the art of slowing down. If I slow down things in a new or old place, it allows me to see things differently and see more things. Hopefully that answered his question.
Yeah, that's a wonderful answer. There is, before I ask another question, Homiyar, you asked me one question which I am unable to decipher. So can you rephrase and ask again so that I'll ask him that question. Now, the other question is by Tibetarian. How strong you should be with finance for landscape photography? I think this is the question that everybody keeps asking us. That how strong you should be with finance for landscape photography that includes cameras, lenses, plus travel. How can we make and earn money with landscape photography? If you can help me out with the answer.
So there are 2 parts to the story. I'm sure, Jassi, you have answered this a lot of times yourself, but let me try and answer this from my side. So he's asking 2 things. One is, how expensive is it to shoot? That includes your hardware and your travel. And then he's asking the second part, how do you monetize that? They're related, but I will answer the first part first. So it depends. I mean, honestly, today, the way the world has moved, even in the landscape photography, you can make images close to where you are, as long as you are doing a job for yourself, as in you're shooting for yourself. Let me rephrase that. If you're shooting for yourself and you're enjoying photography and you want to just put out the work that you love doing, it's perfectly fine to shoot within 100-kilometer vicinity, 200-kilometer vicinity of where you are. Once in a while, try and go with your family vacations or vacations to other places and keep building a portfolio. The thing there, though, is that you're trading off that with creating those images which are compelling, which will set you up as a landscape photographer and make people take you seriously. So that requires you to create portfolios of places and images which are worthy of being noted. It is expensive, and there's no 2 ways about that. the discussion between how important is the gear, does gear define your photography, can be answered in many ways, but I will answer that there is a reason why companies make those expensive gears. Otherwise, everybody would be stuck to choosing the low-end gears. It gives you definite advantage. I at this point in time would not probably shoot with a crop sensor camera. I would not shoot with a lens that I'm not happy with. Having said that, I've always said that try and get into a line where somebody's paying for your travel, and that is really the critical. If you start paying for your travel and that's what you want to do, you're going to go broke very soon if you don't have a source of income. Otherwise, you will be earning here and you'll be blowing there, and net it's a zero-sum game. So you're not going to win anything. So see if you can find someone who can sponsor your travel. Between 2018 and 2020, I can tell you this: there are a lot of avenues and a lot of people who actually do support you to travel. There are a lot of travel agencies, there are a lot of travel companies, there are a lot of avenues, I would say, who would sponsor your tickets or travel for service that you can offer them. And I know personally a lot of photographers who today, at least they are photographers, but back 5 years ago, there were people who connected with me on Facebook, and the next thing I know, 5 years, cut to 5 years, and I see their portfolio, and I'm like, wow, they have traveled around the world. And I'm like, wow, what happened? And then I realized, like, okay, so they have joined a company where they're taking a group of travelers to a place, and so they're being paid, to do that. And there are people who've written blogs, people who have covered from, let's say, creating content for hotel industry, hotels or websites and stuff like that. So there are places and ways to do it. You need to figure out what works for you. It's a hard game. It's not an impossible game though. The way I say that it correlates with how you can monetize is if you have a solid portfolio, the solid portfolio also gives you a solid experience. I think in landscape photography, if you want to make money, one of the things is that you need to be seriously experienced in knowing exactly what you want to do and not to. And when I say that, what I mean is I've executed a lot of projects in the last 2-3 years, which were, I would say, high stake. And when I say high stake, it means a lot of things were riding, and there was a lot of money online to do those projects. And I had finite time. So like example, I was just talking about the Hawaii project, right? Bangalore to Hawaii, with even the stops, is about 40 hours flight. Here's the thing, I'm hitting Hawaii and I have no time to get over jet lag. I've got 4 days and I have commitment on images that I need to give them. And 4th day, I'm back to San Francisco. The ability to know exactly what you want to do, the conditions that no matter what conditions you're going to execute on the images you've promised them, the ability to quickly adapt to the new place, maybe timeline, to the time zones, all of that, and be still at your sharpest is something which is important. So you need to execute projects at a peak of your performance, right? And that happens when you have the experience, you have the knowledge of what to do. The other example I'll also give is the project I did with Johnny Walker or Diageo last year, which was in Jaisalmer. Again, finite time, a lot of things were riding. I actually had a lot of pressure from them. When I had a sit-down meeting with the Vice President of Marketing of Diageo in Bangalore, they'd ask was, you're not going to shoot incredible India pictures. You're not going to take camels. You're not going to take Rajasthani men or women in turbans or their natural attire. And I'm like, so I'm going to shoot desert, Rajasthan, and not shoot those. So what am I shooting? And they said, you're the photographer, you know it. And I'm like, Abhishek, you're not making my job easy. And he said, that's why you're paying me. That's why you're here. You're the specialist, right? So those are some of the stuff. It keeps me awake. I'll tell you this. I mean, I went to Jaisalmer via Delhi, and I was like, I think I lost my sleep for 2 nights. I had no idea. I had never been to Jaisalmer, and I was like, what am I going to shoot? How am I going to shoot? How am I going to show desert, Jaisalmer, end of the world, and not shoot what they're asking me not to shoot? So that's there. Once you start creating portfolios which are world-class and you have the experience, it is easy to execute on your professional side of it at some point in time. Now, the thing you have to understand, I think, is that landscape photography is not selling art. It's not selling prints, all right? It is maybe one of the things. But we need to understand, where does landscape photography merge with a mainstream income opportunity for you? And that may not be in just straight up shooting landscape photography. It will be, where does the landscape photography get applied to? So where do people care? Who cares about pictures that you want to take which are in that area of landscape? Now, when you realize that, and when you figure that out, then you will see that the opportunities to earn is quite a bit. I shot in Red Rock Canyon, which is outside Las Vegas, in 2015 2015 or was it 14? I'm not sure which one of those years. I never really used that images. Okay, I did post some of them, but I never really used it. There's a college outside, law firm in Vegas, which saw one of the images in 500px, and they reached out to me and said, do you have more? And I sent them a snapshot of my raw files and said, this is what I have. And they said, we'd like to buy all of them, right? And suddenly, our project, we were supposed to be just a fun project because I just drove down, became a commercial project. And they bought close to about 15, 16 copies, large copies of those. And it worked out well financially, and it worked out well otherwise as well. So then it started to dawn upon me, where does this really sit in? Where do people care? And once you realize that there are a lot of avenues to make money, websites, companies, corporate houses, hotels, a whole lot of them. But again, it's a little long battle. You got to be patient to do that. I hope it answers, because I know it's a little fuzzy answer, but.
Yeah, I think you've answered, because see, I think the only thing that I would like to add here is that don't be in a hurry to earn money, because as I always keep saying in wherever I speak, give yourself time and continue with on your, keep progressing on your path of being a good photographer, keep improving upon building up your new portfolio, keep adding wonderful images, keep improving with every shot, and then there will come a time then you will suddenly know that yes, there are people who are going to even give you a project or maybe buy your images.
Yeah.
So it has to take time.
I think I will just add one final comment on this, that at least in today's era, and when I say today's era, this is times of Instagram and influence marketing and a lot of projects. It's not just that people want to work with you because you're a landscape photographer. It's also, I think what also matters is what kind of community have you created, right? So what kind of audience do you connect with? What kind of influence do you have on that community? And therefore, what kind of messaging does the different kind of brands want to work through you? So example, and I'll not disclose at this point in time because I've still not executed on the project. I've completed the project, I've not executed it out yet. There is a brand which has come to me to work, and the work that they're asking me to do is not strictly in my area, which is not a landscape work. It is, if I have to really bucket that in a genre, I would say that's a street work, and I don't do street. But they came to me and they said the brand really wants to work with you. And so actually, the first time I quoted them, I actually gave a little forbidding quote because I didn't want to really, do the whole street thing at the level that they were looking at. And they came back, the negotiator, and they still said that the brand is really keen to work with you. So we worked a little bit of a price here and there, and finally we signed up. Now the thing here is, I'm not doing landscape photography for them. They are interested in the message that I can convey to my community with the work that I will do for them. So you see where it is. Monetizing happens in a lot of ways. Landscape photography is not just selling your landscapes, right? Or it's not just about shooting landscape for someone. It is also what you can do with the photography and the community you've created. There, the opportunities are a lot. And I'll tell you this, it is, once you break that threshold, there's an inflection point. The reason that I'm quitting the corporate world completely and getting into this is because I'm getting so many projects there that I'm letting go because I don't have time. A lot of regretful projects. I mean, 2 years ago, a very world-class flight company came to me and said they wanted me to cover 23 destinations and do a coffee table book for them. I had to let it go. 30 days of non-stop traveling at that point in time was impossible for me to do. One of the leading 5-star hotel chains in India came and said, similar project. Again, I had to let it go. Couldn't travel 15, 20 days. But today I want to take those projects up because they are in my terms and they are in my area of work. It takes time to get there. These projects didn't come to me 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, right? But it's coming to me now. It takes time. Just be patient with yourself and keep doing your work.
Very well said. There is another question from Harpreet Ghai. She's asking that all your photographs have particular grading style. When do you think they found your style? And do you think it's necessary to have your grading style, or as some people do it differently for each image? So what she probably wanted to ask is that, is it important to give the similar kind of grading to every image that you shoot so that you create kind of your signature style, or you would want to treat each image differently depending upon giving them a different mood?
No, so I don't have so-called, I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing this term grading style. This is like my introduction to this term. No, there is no such grading style. I'll tell you what, the two things, what is important is for you to have a personality to your photography. And when I say personality, it is a sum total of a lot of things. It's not just how you process your image or how you shoot your image. It is It's that personality that should shine through in every image of yours, right? And that could be flamboyant, it could be muted, it could be flat, it could be honest, it could be whatever. You have to figure out what that personality looks like. A lot of photographers, I see them work, and when they ask me, what do you think? And some of them are really, really accomplished ones. They're really famous ones as well. I'll tell you this. This was a conversation I had earlier this year with a photographer. I looked at his work and I was like, wow, it's really nice. And he said, what do you find nice? And I said, I think your work is very honest. And that's all I had a word for him. Whatever he was doing was very honest. It didn't look flamboyant. It didn't look flashy. It didn't look colorful. It was really nice. So what is important is to develop a personality. Now, I think my photograph, especially the landscape, does have its own sense of personality. Let's just put it that way. Because as Prakash was saying, they are shot in a similar time, time areas, or what should I say, time zones. When I say time zone, not the time zone, but I'm saying between 5 to 7 and maybe 5:30 a.m. to 6:30 a.m., so on and so forth. So the light is more or less similar. And so therefore the processing is also similar. Now, it's not a preset, it's not a gradient. It is, each image will be treated to what it is, right? So if the morning has red patches of cloud, which is, or when I say patches of cloud, which is catching the red light, then it'll be there. If it's a little later than that, and if the same patch of cloud is catching yellows from the sun, then it's going to be yellow. The point is, when you look at the color palette, right, the orange to yellow are all warm colors. And human eye tends to bucket all of them into one single so-called gradient and say that, it has a particular style. Yes, it does, because I've shot all of them in that time frame. So you will see that there are similar color palettes, but it is not that I apply a universal filter to all my pictures. So if that's what she was meaning, and that's the answer.
Yeah, thank you. There's one very interesting question by one Ninds, Nindzzz, interesting name. As artists, we tend to go through these creative blocks, those dull periods when there is no inspiration. How do you handle such situation? Have you, first of all, I think what is not asked is that have you ever gotten into that? If you have, yes, then how did you handle it?
Yeah, so I think this is again a question that I've answered in the past. This is an honest answer. Okay, so I'm going to be really brutally honest here. I think the creative block doesn't happen because of your own sense of inspiration or what you want to do. I think creative block happens when there are external, for want of a better word, forces that plays either in your mind, in your heart, or in your life. Those, I think, tend to throw our interest of photography on and off. And I'll give an example. And this is very practical. I'm saying this is brutally honest stuff, right? So if you see a photographer who you, I wouldn't say benchmark or compare, but somebody you relate with, let's just call it that. He could be your peer, he could be your, I don't know, frenemy, another term that I'll use, right? And you see that for a similar work of his and similar work of yours, his pictures are getting a lot more traction, he's getting a lot more popularity, he's getting a lot more engagement, whereas your work is not getting the due recognition. Now that can throw your creativity into a block. But this is not because of your issue. It's an issue which is external. It's a very emotional stuff, right? And it's hit you. And therefore you suddenly decide, you know what, ho gaya, mujhe nahi karna. Because I've tried my best, I've given it my heart, and yet look at that guy. He's shooting in his backyard and he's getting more work than me. So to me, and here's what I've done. I've been shooting for non-stop for a very, very lot of years, around close to about 20, 22 years now. I've never had an issue in creativity block. And the reason for that is I've always said this, and I continue to say this, that I always shoot for myself. If something makes me happy, I'll do it. And I really don't care if it has an acceptance both socially or in the world. Now, when I say that, it doesn't mean I want to do some radical stuff. I'm not going to put stuff out there which doesn't meet my own expectations, my own standards, my own certain benchmarks. But if it meets, then I'm okay. And so it's fine. So if popular images go to, an Instagram term, 2,000 likes, and not so popular goes to 500 likes, I'm not going to compare that 500 and crib about 2,000. So the creative block is something which you need to take a deep down look every time you have a creative block and figure out what is the trigger for that. And I think most of the time a trigger is not because of yourself, or it's not about, it's not about photography, it's not about creativity, which is at a block. It's your mind which is messed up right there. Figure out what is causing the problem. And I think you need to figure out a rational reason why it's happening and how to overcome it. because I deal with a lot of, as I said, hobbyists and photographers who work with me, most of the time the creative block happens because they end up comparing themselves, either at a social status or a photography status or whatever. And that gets them agitated, that gets them demotivated, that gets them ruffled, that gets them, their anxiety levels are high. And that indirectly plays into their creativity block. So if you can separate out threads and figure out what is causing that dissatisfaction, what is causing that desire to not go out and create content, you will be able to come over that block. I firmly believe in that. Because inspirational is everywhere. So whatever genre you're shooting, the street, landscape, travel, wildlife, I mean, the inspirations are always external. They are not, whatever you shot yesterday doesn't change tomorrow. So if you've been shooting wildlife and you've done all of that, you've documented everything that is potentially and probably there to document, you will still get that euphoric high every time you're on a safari and you see the next call, or you hear the next call and you see the next animal in the wild. That feeling will never go away. Same thing, landscape. Every time I'm in a new place or a place that I've been to, in different conditions, different day, inspires the whole feeling all over again. I don't have a problem with inspiration. It's the execution of the inspiration into photographic sense which is a problem. And there the problem is not the creative block, but it's something else. And I think that's why I'm saying I might differ from this whole term and terminology of creative block. I think you need to figure out what is creating that issue.
All right. That's interesting answer. So I'll pick up a couple of questions and then probably if somebody.
Somebody said.
I have a question. Yeah. So there is a question related to how much of highlights and shadows do you adjust later on. So I'd like to add to that and request Bobby if he could take us through his image workflow, like how he shoots and how he edits, in a very short.
Interesting. Okay, so I'll need to pull out my raw files and do some adjustments. But let me answer this theoretically first, and then as we speak, let me see if I can pull out some stuff here and do that. Yeah. I think, I have, because I do so many workshops just like Jassi, I've always said this, that the trick is not in post-processing. The trick is in really photography. The more you can do in-camera stuff and the more perfect you do it there, the task or the work that is to be done at a post-processing is a lot easier. Now, having said that, I should also call it out that each photographer has their own way of seeing and shooting things. When I say that, what I mean is, for example, my style of shooting is underexposing. I always underexpose. I meter for the light, so my highlights are protected, and I don't care about shadows because the ability for my camera to pull out the shadows is pretty good. So I've never had an issue there. I don't have grains, I don't have burn pixels or anything. Now, my style of shooting is underexposure. Now, somebody sees that as a raw file, they will always say he shoots underexposed images all the time. Now, technically, going by definition of photography, that is not the right thing. You want to work with your light meter where your meters are close to zero, or at least in the middle of it. Now, the reason I have a certain style in shooting is because I have an idea of how I'm going to process it. So you see how it connects, right? So as long as I'm getting it right in the camera, in whichever way so if I'm going 2-stop minus every shot where the sun is up in the horizon, then I know how to process it later, and there's a set way to do it. The problem is if I mess up there, so I underexpose instead of 2-stop, 4-stop. Now I'm probably in a zone where I might not be able to recover too much of detail.
Right.
Or
you'll never be able to do it. Yeah.
There you go. Right. So how much do I adjust depends on what I have shot and at what time I have shot. But the question is that adjustment something which requires me an hour of processing? No, it doesn't. It's still something that, I have a rule that I set almost about 6-7 years ago, probably early digital days. I said, if any image of mine takes more than a certain minute in my mind, then I'm doing something wrong. So either I'm overcooking it or I've shot something off, and I penalize myself by not processing that image or using an image at all. And I'm happy to go back and shoot it one more time. And I do this over and over again. It happened to me a lot of times, yes. But that's how I penalize myself. I remember. I'm a golfer, by the way, so I should say why this rule has come in my life. If you played golf, there's a term called OB, which means out of bound. So if you take a shot and if your ball has drifted out of ground or out of bound, you lose 2 shots and you get 2-shot penalty. There is no second shot. There's a word for that. It's called taking a, it's a trial shot, but that's not how it is done professionally, right? You take a wrong shot, you hit in the water, you hit out of bounds, you will get the penalty shot. There is no shortcut. And that's how it should be in photography too. If I have messed up a photography in camera, no amount of post-processing can fix it later. But let me just, while we're speaking, I'm just going to pause my screen, my camera, and see if I can pull out something to do here. Jassi, over to you. You can, I'm listening. I can still answer. I'm just.
All right. So there is one interesting question that I think every beginner photographer or everybody who does not is not in a position to invest too much money into buying expensive cameras. So some question is by Harshal, that I wanted to know that in photography, does mobile shots stand any chance to come right in front of the camera shots? So.
Okay. I'm sure you can also answer this as much as I can. What was his name? You said Harshal, is it?
It is, Harshal Ukhlikar.
Okay. So Harshal, I should tell you this, that, if you're sticking with mobile photography, there's a whole world out there, which is just on mobile photography. There's a world of photography which exists around mobile photography. There's a world of commercial photography which exists around mobile photography. There's a world that you can actually monetize and make money with just mobile photography. So to answer your question, strictly speaking, what you can execute in camera, I would say probably 55–60% of that can be executed in your mobile phone as well. You will always have the limitations of not having interchangeable lens. You will not have the luxury of changing your aperture. You will also not have the luxury of those, megapixels that you might get. While camera might say it has 40 megapixel, 50 megapixel. Reality is a DSLR's megapixel of 30, 40 is a lot different and a lot more than one of the mobile phone. You may not be able to create those large posters out of your mobile phone shots, but aside those, if you're somebody who's a beginner, I think in today's world, there's a lot of distance you can travel with just mobile photography. When I say that, you can start entering competitions. You can even start creating a community of your own, either influencing photography or photography as a business with just mobile photography as well. You have to be careful where you're playing, right? There are a lot of photographers who I know have started with mobile photography, and they were doing a fantastic job. They moved from mobile to a GoPro, which is an incremental cost, so if you look at it that way. Then from GoPro, they have come into a mainstream DSLRs, and then they have moved on. So you will grow through that, and you will see that you will find it. There will come a time when you will see that your mobile phones are becoming a physical handicap for you to create a certain kind of images, and that's when you will realize a need to move on. But till you have that, you can do a lot with mobile phone for sure. I do a lot of them. I've actually, I'm being very honest. The last Munnar trip that I did with Good Shots was in November of last year. I actually shot entire trip with only mobile phone. That's it. In the Dave Bar trip I was just discussing with Dave, Jassi before the call, was 90% of the shots I've taken is only from mobile phone. The DSLR raw files are on my laptop, and I have not even opened them yet. The mobile phones I've already processed and I kept them ready. So it depends.
Thank you. I think it's been such a wonderful session. Anybody wants to ask? Because there's one last question I'll ask, and then I think we can start winding up. Som, you have any questions? Anybody?
Just Humpy special, because that's the background I have too, and yeah, I mean, I think I fell in love with Humpy the moment I landed over there the first time, and that was years back. And you're probably the only photographer who actually made an effort to hold the artistic beauty that Humpy upholds, right? So, what absorbed you? How did Humpy weave its magic on you?
So I've been a history buff all my life. I'll still continue to be one. History used to be my favorite subject in my school. In fact, back when I was in 6th, 7th grade, if somebody had to ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? My answer was, I want to be Indiana Jones. I want to be an archaeologist traveling around the world and going through the history. So it continues to be my passion. History is something I watch a lot of documentaries on, I read a lot of books on, even today, and I'm seeing on a regular basis. So I knew about Humpy because my dad had gone to Humpy. He talked about musical pillars when I was a kid and everything else. So when I got a chance to travel to Hampi, I mean, even today, I think I've gone to Hampi 12, 13 times. There's so much still to discover there. There's a haunting beauty about the place. And no matter what I do, or no matter how much I shoot in Hampi, I still fail to capture the spirit that I really want to do it. It just gets me on every time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Inspiration. Very inspirational.
Welcome.
So there is one last question. I think we'll ask somebody. He's asked on YouTube. Ramamurthy Palani
Doctor, yeah.
Serious, passionate hobbies in landscape photography to climb up the ladder and enjoy yourself the works.
Sorry, what was the question? I lost you there, Jassi.
Your advice to serious, passionate hobbies in landscape photography.
Okay, so Doctor has come with me on a lot of trips, and he should already know this. I think one of the things, if you're a passionate photographer, a landscape or a hobbyist, as he calls it, I think it's important to really enjoy the beauty of the place. I mean, there will never come a time when you get to a place and you will get perfect conditions. Now, as a photographer, we tend to get very agitated. You know, you go to a place and it's raining and you're like cursing. If it is, I don't know, some band, and then you're cursing again. You have to understand that travel and nature, I mean, travel is in your control, but nature is not in your control, and to never be in your control, right? And you cannot control the elements of nature ever. You have to understand how big that is, and you have to succumb in front of that every time. So it'll teach you humility, it'll teach you humbleness, and you need to play it by the book. So you should be prepared. If you love a place, whatever that place is, you don't get it right the first time, you be prepared to go the second time and third time. That is what passion is about. Passion is not about getting to a place and giving it all of yours and saying, in this one trip, I'm going to get everything. That's never going to happen. So that's one. And two is that I think that the journey is more, this is a very good quote, right? The journey is more beautiful than the destination. So landscape photography is just like that. There is no particular landscape where you come or where you reach and you say, I've arrived or I have shot. There are more turns on the road, and there are more destinations to go. And the whole journey is beautiful. You can make images out of literally nowhere, even in your backyard, and you can mess up an image even in the most pretty and beautiful places in the world. So you just have to figure out what works for you, and then slow it down and enjoy every beauty that you find along the way.
One quick question, Bobby. Yeah. Any plans of coming to Northeast?
Anytime soon? Last time I was in Northeast was in 2012-13. I went to Kaziranga for 3 days. I was so disappointed. I couldn't get any tiger, only saw rhinoceros. I really want to come, Himadri. I've been thinking about coming to Shillong and the whole, waterfall belt. I'm happy that I've connected with you. It's definitely a plan. We were thinking about it this year as well. In case the domestic travel opens, international doesn't open, my first destination is going to be Northeast. So yeah,
awesome.
Happening.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are we seeing Bobby's raw files? The editing process?
We can do it.
Do you have a PhD? Do you have a PhD with you?
PhD I don't have, but I can.
Let's see what Bobby can show us.
Okay, I know we are on top of the hour, and so let me see. You guys see my?
Yeah. Lightroom.
Yeah.
Okay. You see your Lightroom.
This is ACR, Adobe Camera Raw, which now looks like Lightroom. So it just everything.
Yeah, they've changed
the interface of.
Yeah.
So this is shot. Yeah, this is shot in Munnar, and this is shot with a D850 with a 15 mm Laowa lens. So I should say this: even 80% of the lenses that I work are fully manual, no autofocus and no auto exposure either. So it's fully manual. So it's like the focusing is manual, aperture setting is also manual. Shot at ISO 31, 1/200, and I think this must have been at f11 or f13. So as I said, I typically, you see my histogram, it will always lean towards left. Metering is towards the sky, so everything in the sky is.
Do you spot meter it?
Yes, spot meter.
Okay.
Spot meter.
Okay.
Yes. And the typical, the way I would always get down to, there are two ways I can do it, or I do it. One is I start with an auto and then I build upwards from there. So when you start with you click auto and let me see. Sorry, there's a lag in my computer, I think. Yeah. Oops. Okay, I'm just going to give my walk. Yeah. So this could be a start point to build the image from here. Or sometimes I also do it ground up, which means opening up the panel, adjustment panel, and deciding how it works. But let me just quickly typically show you what it does. So it's basically always about the exposure adjustment, and I look at the histogram to see where am I going wrong, where am I okay. Couple of tips: I never push these sliders to the extreme ends. Just because they can be pushed, I don't push them. So it's typically somewhere in the middle like this. The other tip I will go is I'm not going to work out too much with the auto white balance and other stuff. This is not really a post-processing class. I'm not going to do it, but I just talk about a few things that I keep in mind. The light I build is mostly in the curve section, and I can do it two ways, which is the point curve or the parametric curve. So I prefer using parametric a lot of times, which is here. Oops, sorry. Which is here, and the light, this is where the contrasting light starts building up. So I use this, and I work with these panels right here quite a bit to build that contrasty light. Then the next step is I spend a lot of time in color mixer or HSL panel, as it used to be called, and split toning allows me to get the right tones of colors in line with the color theory. So if this was shot about 4:30 p.m., I guess, or a little later, probably 5 p.m. So there are the yellows in the sky, and because it's raw, the colors have all gone away. So I'll build in the split toning, let's say, build the color for about a 5 o'clock look. So warm up the highlights and then compensate that with the cools of the blue. So somewhere around here, and just do that and push it towards the highlight. Come back to the color mixer and work with the HSL panel to get the adjustment. For example, the yellows or the green luminance in this is something I can push up right here instead of going with the brushes. So a lot of work that goes in color mixer and HSL. Optics, geometry, effects are all calibrations. Everything is stuck with is in line with what camera and lens I use. But this is where I spend a lot of time, which is the brush and the gradient and the radial tools. So a lot
and when do you touch the white balance, or do you just do it in the camera?
No, I don't. So my camera is always set to auto. I usually don't bother with auto white balance or white balance till I'm shooting in conditions where white balances are challenging. So I'll show you an image quickly after this where white balance was a challenge. Then I go with the color picker tool. So then I will go and pick the color to choose the color, to choose the white balance. So I'll use this, find the the gradient with the place where I want to do that, and then adjust it. So here or wherever that works, right? All right, so let me just go back to as shot for now. This one looks pretty okay to me as shot. So this is where a lot of other work will go in terms of creating light. So the sense of creating light. So I follow a principle of following the light. So depending on where the light is coming and where light is going, I use the physics here to understand how I want to create light. So I'll probably kill the light on the sky, and then maybe go to a radial and create a light along the lines of where the light should be with the kind of color temperature and everything. So let's just create one around here, give this a little clarity, just kind of reflect it off. So obviously it's become too warm, adjust it back, and then maybe come back and create a cool gradient, grounds up somewhere around here to give that feeling. Cut on the lights on both sides. This one has gone too dark. So just fine tune that, fine tune on the other side. The brush is really all about figuring out the places where I want to do targeted adjustments. So for example, maybe the rays is something I want to highlight that a bit. So let's use a little clarity and maybe a little white, and let's size a bit, and let's see what I can do here. Right, so this is not showing too much of change, so I'm just going to create that. Right, so this is typically how, so a lot of my work happens on the ACR before I would import this onto Photoshop and then maybe use a little luminosity mask to build out things. But yes, I do pay attention to, as I said, the light. So for example, if I have to kind of zoom this in and let's just say, I'll just give you an example, a small example to explain what I'm talking about. Let's say on this side, so the light is coming on this tree, right? So now clearly there are parts of this tree which should be lit up, and there's a part of the tree which should not be lit up because that's not facing the sun. So how do I bring up the light on this side and not on that side? Similarly here, and similarly, each of these lights that is falling on the tree needs to, so there's some backlights here, there's some side lights on this. There could be a side light potentially. There's definitely a light here. which is not coming out. So, you know, you can create the light around here, which comes in a nice gradient with a nice color, so on and so forth. So that's how typically it will work. And ultimately, the raw that you will end up seeing here will be probably about 80–85% complete before I bring it onto Photoshop. Let me just pause there. Just because we were talking about the tough light balance, the white balance, let me just bring up this image and show this part as well, and then we'll call it a day. And I'll just give me a minute, and I'll. So let me share this screen, and we go to this one and share the screen. All right, so this was shot in Humpy, and this is what I would call a tricky white balance situation. So an auto adjustment here will tell you that because the foreground has got so much of warm color kind of coming out of the stone, that you've lost all the color, and this is as shot right now. And even if I do an auto, it still doesn't do a good job. It makes it very purplish. So this is where I would manually override all of this and look for a point that I want the white balance in, and then get the right light. So maybe somewhere here. So you start to get a better light. The foreground stone has now come back to its original color. The skies have got cyan and blues. You can see oranges, yellows around here. And then it starts a start point. So it depends. I mean, if the image requires white balancing, it is difficult, then I will. But most of the time, white balancing is something I leave it to auto, because I'll tell you why. The overriding correction that happens after that through the HSL panel, through the split tone, is going to alter that anyway. It's going to bring it back to where it was.
I think what is important, what is the takeaway for everybody who's out there trying to understand your process, is that you need to understand how these tools work and what you can do with these tools, because it is not right to have the understanding that one tool will do the same job in every image. It will not. And just trying to figure that out and keep changing your methodology. That you will be able to only do when you are aware of the basics of it, not just the superficial, not just playing a song, but probably understanding the notes as well.
Yeah, so I will. I'll say a few things about that. Okay, so this is from a theoretical perspective. One is, everybody knows about tools. Tools are very easy to know and master, right? So there is no magic in there. There's no science in that. If you understand sliders, if you understand what split tone does, what highlights to what shadows, so you know it. It's like no-brainer after that. The trick is to follow a few things. One is, photography is all about light. Let's go back to that, right? So if it is about light, are you paying attention to where the shadows are? And if you're paying attention to where shadows are, how are you exaggerating those shadows? Are you paying attention to where light is falling? If you are paying attention to where light is falling, there's those trees and everything that I showed, how do you build that light exactly and precisely in that place? Now, that is where your tool comes in play, but your mind is what is leading the whole processing bit. If you don't know the tool, you'll not be able to do it for sure. But if you know the tool and you don't know what is to be done, you will still not be able to execute it. So follow the light, right? Figure out where the light is, create the light. You have to understand how you create the light. You have to enhance the light, which is getting the colors back, because raw file is going to make everything flat. So the tone of orange and tone of blue is going to look very, very flat. But the reality is, what is the right tone? This is right, this is more, this is less. I mean, that's something you'll have to understand. And the third thing is that I think, please follow the color theory. It's something people don't pay attention to. All painters that ever existed, that today exist, all digital artists, follow that. There's a photographer I follow on Instagram. Every single post of his has a swipe up, and the last swipe is about color theory. He will have a color theory built in with a color chart, every picture, to tell you what color theory is used. Question is, as landscape photographer, the most difficult of all photographies to process is landscape. It is the most challenging. The reality is, you're shooting outdoors all the time. And most of us don't follow color theory. So you don't know exactly what tone of green is going to go with what tone of yellow, what tone of blue is going to go with what tone of red maybe. And if you don't know that, it's not going to work. Your images will always have a very garish, ugly tones in them. So please learn the color theory. That's the only thing I would say.
Yeah, that was wonderful advice. And thank you so much. We are already touched marks. And So thank you so much for opening up also. So Bobby was a little kind of apprehensive about the timing. So I hope it was smooth sailing so far.
It is. I just have a rule that, every time somebody tells me live, I say 1 hour top, no more after that. But this has been a 2 hour. I'm like, I've been keeping an eye on the watch here. I'm like, whoa, 2 hours now. The longest ever for me.
But I think it was smooth because people are still sticking out there on YouTube and trying to.
Thank you so much for joining and having me
as much as they can. And I think these sessions are kind of an eye opener for everybody who's trying to get into photography and trying to make their way into landscape photography. And you are one of the major influencing factor for them, and you have a huge fan following, and we can see that. Right? And thank you, Bobby, all over again. And before we really wind up, one customary kind of screenshot that I'll take, and everybody will look up and smile so that I can just take that screenshot. So thank you guys. It's been wonderful. Yeah. So anybody wants to say anything, and then we say just goodbye.
No, just thank you. I was late in joining the session, but thank you very much, Bobby.
Yeah. Pleasure being here. Thank you so much for hosting me here. I'm happy to make all these friends. Imadri, I'm definitely coming and pinging you when I come to Northeast.
Sure. I'll be there.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. See you.
Thank you. Bye. Take care. Guys, stick around.